Why, hello there. Welcome to Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. Sit back, chill out, and go on a journey around the world. Around the world. Justin will discuss tales of hope, discovery, and general irreverence with some of the most dynamic personalities in the travel business. Remember, we do cool shit, and so can you.
Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to another edition of Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. This week's guest is a gentleman named Ivan Somlai. Ivan is a renowned and legendary tour guide that has led countless groups across Mongolia, Sri Lanka, you name it. He's got it covered, especially in the Asian subcontinent. He's just an incredible wealth of experience and information in this little part of the world. And I believe, he's been in Nepal for 18 years or just something crazy. Ivan is a relatively new acquaintance of mine, and we got in touch after episode 5, which I featured Jalsa Yerbshuro from our ground handler in Mongolia Nomadic Expeditions. And Ivan reached out, like, hey, I used to lead trips with Jalsa and everything, and let's have a chat. Let's see if we can do anything. And just unbelievable. This chat is absolutely, there's nothing salesy about this. This is just a really cool personality with a really fascinating conversation. And one thing I love about these is that they're kind of, they're, in terms of structure, they're kind of free form. And we talk about destinations that I have no intention of selling, one being Pakistan and the other being even North Korea, of all places. And I think that it's really cool to get a firsthand account of somebody that's been to a place like this, because we hear stuff in the media all the time that who knows who to believe. And, you guys know how that stuff works. At least I hope you do. But in any event, we talk about his life and how his work, being a consultant and an athlete, and had all these experiences all around the world open up new doors for him. And it's just a really fun chat with just a fascinating personality that's got a wealth of experience globetrotting. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Ivan and myself. As always, please subscribe if you like the video. If you want to book a trip with us at Swaggy Swan, I'll include the link here below for you guys. Hit the like video and hope to hear from you soon. Take care and have a great day. Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. This week, I'm absolutely honored to have what I like to call a true international man of mystery. Ivan Somlai and I first came in contact after I published episode 5, which is all geared towards Mongolia. And Ivan had known Jalsa, our guest there, shout out to Jalsa from Nomadic Expeditions, and he was just like, oh my gosh, it's so good to see Jalsa. And we had and you emailed me this really incredible resume. And I was not sure what to make of it at first. I was like, oh my gosh, is this guy, he could be a trip leader. He could be a management consultant. He could be a diplomat. He could be a spy. I'm not really sure. So we had our first chat and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's life is unbelievable. I got to get him on the show. Ivan, thanks for coming on the show. How's everything going?
My pleasure. It's going quite well. As I mentioned earlier, I've been shoveling snow already here in Kamloops, British Columbia.
Yeah, you're up in British Columbia, and it's we're getting towards like a change of seasons here in San Francisco, but I'd imagine that has a much more dramatic, profound impact for you guys.
It does, but I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Even more in Mongolia where it gets colder.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure the steppes there, they're just relentless, especially during the winter times. But it's probably, got to evoke a sense of nostalgia for you, and you really want to kind of, go back and experience that.
Well, I have to say, looking at the temperatures this past week, it's been about the same in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, as in Kamloops. So there hasn't been much difference yet.
There you go. Well, do you actually make butter tea or anything like that just for nostalgia purposes?
No, I used to drink a lot in Nepal, in the northern parts of Nepal where the Sherpas and Manangis
Cool.
and other ethnic groups live. Butter tea is quite popular.
Yeah.
And in fact, but it's like anything that's made, it's homemade.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends which home you get it from. So some it's not very good, and at others it's very tasty.
So yeah, each home has their own specific kind of like recipe and blend of butter tea.
Exactly. Yeah. So
That's
usually, if I think about it as let's say chicken soup, it tastes very good.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
If I compare it to regular tea, it's not so good. So,
right.
But I find it very useful, and it's certainly extremely healthy at the high altitudes. So yeah, I used to drink a lot of it. Yeah, if you replenish with salt and so on. Yeah.
So butter tea aside, I was so like how. I mean, like I said previously, your resume is just so diverse and incredible. Like, it's just mind-blowing. How, when you're sitting at a bar and somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you respond to that?
Well, what I would say is that I certainly have had an eclectic life, and I very much appreciate that. Currently, I would say within the last 30 years, it's probably been international development.
Okay.
Through various ways and means. Some of it through private consulting, a lot of it through university work. But whether it's been technical projects or management or tourism, social development, and so on, it's been related to international development. I first got into it. Well, I got very interested in travel. First of all, I was a refugee from Hungary, so I remember our boat trip from Italy to Halifax in Canada.
Right.
That was my first international travel. But I do recall that, what was I going to say? I got involved in sports a lot, many different kinds of sports, but eventually I was involved in water polo.
Okay.
In which I became the national assistant coach and eventually Olympic assistant coach and general manager. But through that sport, I traveled a lot with the team, arranging competitions in Europe, in Central America, and United States, and so on, California. So it got into travel, and I got very interested in the way that different cultures where we went interacted, and what some of the differences were, why we had difficulty sometimes understanding what they wanted and vice versa, and so on. And gradually I got involved actually with our federal government in doing courses bilingually in English and French relating to multiculturalism, and helping various departments understand how to better deal with people from minority cultures, and so on. So that it sort of escalated from there, if you will, into actually getting involved in development programs through university, and then, like I said, through private consulting as well.
Right. And so that planted a seed at a very, early age, the exposure of different cultures, and especially, your family story leaving Hungary, to just kind of get a career, or whether you realized it consciously or not, to kind of structure your life having this international development.
It wasn't conscious. I never said, well, this is what I am going to do. It just one thing fell into another. And I remember once somebody was actually at university, they were asking me before hiring me, well, you've had all these different backgrounds, can you explain to us how that would help you? Because some employers would look at it as being, maybe not stable, jumping around, doing
That's
this.
True.
But in my mind, and that part was conscious, it all tied together. Every experience tied positively into helping me understand a different experience. Mm-hmm. That helped me. Another way to explain it is I've done some writing on interdisciplinarity. Mm-hmm. And I've developed projects, multi-year projects based on that. And what that means is that, for example, this project I developed in Indonesia in social forestry with my colleagues in Indonesia, there were major problems between extractive industries like logging and palm oil and so on, and the surrounding communities. And they could never get them to agree. They'd call company president, and he'd understand it in a particular way. People would complain to the forestry officer, he'd understand it in a particular way. There really was no way of moving forward harmoniously. And what we did with the Indonesian team is to develop a team that included a gender specialist, an agriculturalist, a botanist, a forester, agroforester, industrial relations, a legal person, and so on, and develop this as a team that would look at each problem together, not passing a document through the mail to somebody else for comments and so on, but actually sitting together and realizing that people who had no background in mining or community development actually saw something that others wouldn't from their own perspective.
Right.
And were able to then give suggestions as to what may be happening actually and how to rectify it. Mm. And this is fascinating me. It worked extremely well, and it's still working.
So you were more or less like this cultural whisperer, this cultural guru that was, basically building bridges, right?
I wouldn't go as far as to say guru. I'm culturally, yes, I'm most interested culturally. I'm not at all. I certainly don't call myself a guru, but no, I've developed ways of working with different ethnic groups, different cultural groups. Even just this morning, an hour before I got in touch with you, I was involved in a program on indigenous appropriation issues. So yeah, culture very much interests me, and it's part of my whole life, the family life and sure. My professional life, everything.
It's definitely hardwired in your DNA. Now, how did that segue into you leading scheduled group departures across Mongolia and beyond?
I got involved in, I studied for a year in Switzerland, and I got involved in climbing while I was there. Okay. So when I came back to Canada, I lived at that time in Montreal, mm-hmm. but I realized the mountains weren't big enough in Montreal, and I moved out west
yes.
to the Rocky Mountains, and continued university there and got more involved in climbing and so on. Anyway, so I got involved in a lot of outdoor work, climbing, canoeing, and many other aspects. And I was asked by actually an American company that I know you're familiar with, yes. back in 1988 to lead their climbing trips in Nepal.
Oh, that's awesome.
I did that for 18 years. But in Canada itself, I did some climbs, not big ones, but quite a few different mountaineering expeditions.
Are you still?
I did that for many years in Nepal, climbing, and I got into the habit, for better or worse, that during holidays, I would make sure to schedule being able to lead a group somewhere.
That's a perfect life. I mean, are you still actively climbing, or is this something that you're?
No, I'm not climbing anymore, but I do ski still as hard and as much as I can.
Oh, you're in the perfect place.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, out of all of these fantastic places there's so many different destinations that we can talk about, but we've got to limit it, of course. Why don't you walk us through? I think we've picked out about 5 good ones, and I'd love to hear you start. You seem extremely passionate right now about Indonesia. Tell me about Indonesia, what your experience was like there, and how you've set it up.
Well, most people, when they think of doing tourism in Indonesia, think of Bali, perhaps, and some other.
Or they think Bali's a country just unto its own right.
yeah, basically. So, but my work there, which was through the university, establishing this Center for Social Forestry, which still exists, mm-hmm. Was in East Kalimantan, which is one of the Indonesian provinces on the island of Borneo.
Borneo, yeah.
Yeah, there's also the country of Brunei and 2 states of Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak in the north. But the rest of the Borneo is divided into the Kalimantan provinces. Yeah. And I worked in the East Kalimantan Timur, which has a big city of Balikpapan, where one would arrive by flying in. And then the capital, Samarinda.
Right.
Is further up on the Mahakam River.
Yeah, we'll put a map up so everybody can kind of follow along where you're talking about.
Of course. It's a fabulous place. It's an intersection of not only Muslim. I mean, most of Indonesia is Muslim, but there's an intersection of Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism within Samarinda, and while other areas of Indonesia, especially in Kalimantan, had some major demonstrations from time to time.
Yeah.
East Kalimantan has always remained peaceful. Just wonderful people there. And so while working with the university there at a 6-year project, I also had a chance to go up the Mahakam River, which is one of the longest rivers in the world, perhaps not the longest, but one of the longer ones. And you can go upriver and just go through a medley of cultural and historical exploration on this magnificent river. You can engage with the so-called Dayaks, who are the indigenous tribal groups. There's opportunity to discuss environmental issues related to forest fires, peat fires, palm oil production, extractive industries, community interactions. You can get to see orangutans and other animals, hundreds of different birds. And you can also have lectures from my colleagues at the university, for example,
right,
along the way. And it's not a major tourist area yet. So I think it's a fabulous place to introduce people to somewhere where there's considerably less tourism than in a place like Bali, certainly, and see something very different. Beautiful museums. There's in Tenggarong the Kutai Sultanate Museum. There's Muarakaman, which is the Hindu kingdom that used to be in that place. There used to be a lot of Hindus. Melak and many smaller Dayak villages with the long houses and so on. And quite a few of them are still considerably traditional, so you could learn a lot directly from the people living there, their lifestyle and everything else. And very nice, very peaceful.
Orangutan experience, obviously. I mean, most people envision Borneo, both the Malaysian and the Indonesian side, for the orangutan experience. Do you have any comments or input on that?
About the orangutan?
Yeah, and what it's like, what people can expect from the experience.
Well, you can see a lot of by going up. First of all, if you go up if you do a tour up the Mahakam River, you can go up by houseboat. Okay. Yeah, you go up quite a ways by houseboat, and then depending on the group, it has to be pre-planned. But you could go further up, but it will be in smaller motorized canoes and so on. And it's not the safest all the time, but it's something that could be planned ahead of time. So there are a lot of animals that you could see from the boat itself, and then in certain villages you could also see plants. But orangutans would be better seen actually in some sanctuaries. There's so-called sanctuaries, which are in the forest lower down. So not up Mahakam, but a bit lower down. Okay. There are a couple of different sanctuaries where they can be seen. You may see them in the wild, but that's not guaranteed. But in the sanctuaries you can. But going up on the river, you can definitely see various types of primates. Various types of cats and monkeys and birds and smaller animals. You see lots. It's good fishing.
It sounds like something that's like truly off the beaten path and still not. I mean, even when tourism was in full swing pre-COVID, I don't think that there were a lot of people going there. So that's one of those, last remaining.
Not in that area. No.
Yeah. I mean, I personally I know parts of it outside of the orangutan experience. I know Indonesia for two things, and I'm not going to talk about Bali or Komodo or anything. The first one would be Borobudur, and the other one would be Torajaland or Toraja. Am I saying that correctly?
Which one?
Torajaland.
Borobudur I know, but the other one I am not familiar with.
Borobudur?
Yes, but the other one I'm not familiar with.
Oh, okay, I think it's more of a cultural area with the Toraja people. I'm not 100% sure. I had a buddy of mine that went there in the tourism business. Maybe this is like, I'm dating myself, 9-10 years ago. And they went there and just said culturally, it just blew his mind, Torajaland.
Yes.
So, definitely something to look into. But Borobudur, from what I understand, is this gigantic temple complex, right?
Yes. And there are similar ones, but
Or is that elsewhere?
it's not in Kalimantan, no.
Okay.
But in Kalimantan, like I said, there are museums. There are some palaces, still older palaces and historical buildings.
Okay, cool.
It's a different type of tourist experience. I think it's much more laid back in a way than in many other places.
Right.
One,
right.
because of less tourists around, and two, just the nature of the river and a lot of the trip being on the river. Although you could also drive to many places, but the river gives it an extra dimension.
Right. And speaking of just kind of a segue into the next destination, definitely more off the beaten path place that I'm dying to get to, that you've been all over. And I'm super jealous because, again, this is something that I am totally jumping out of my skin to see. Pakistan and the Hindu Kush Mountains. How did you get there?
Well,
what the experience is like?
When I was asked to manage a project based in Peshawar, which is the capital. Well, which is the capital. It used to be called Northwest Frontier Province. It's called Khyber Pakhtunkhwa now. And when I was there from 2008 to 2011, it was still quite active with Taliban.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was asked to go there. Couldn't decide, because every time I said, okay, well, let me sit on it for an hour, and then I read an article or hear something on the radio about a suicide bomber or something like that.
That discouraged you.
Anyways, finally I did accede, and I wrote letters to several former colleagues who had been to Pakistan for short time work, asking for their opinions. Should I go there or not? What do they think? And without exception, they all said, you're crazy if you go. And then I had one actual Pakistani contact to whom I wrote, and he wrote back saying, we're human beings like everywhere else. We're wonderful people. You must come and see us. And that sort of sold me on it.
Yeah.
And so we did go there. And I tell you, we very much miss Pakistan and Peshawar, and it's an incredibly beautiful culture. The Pakhtun and the other ones, I spent time with meetings and so on in Lahore and Islamabad, Karachi, and so on as well. But most of my work was within within Peshawar and the rest of the districts within the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. I did have so I traveled all around.
Right.
And I also had a chance to go to Gilgit-Baltistan for meetings. What can I say?
Any favorite areas, states, provinces, places that you like?
Well, my favorite province remains, perhaps because I work there, even though I visited the other provinces as well. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, with the capital in Peshawar, which is one of the oldest cities in the world. It goes back about 3,000 years, even now there's an old area in the city called Kiskhani, which is where they used to in groups sit around, have tea and chat and so on. Very narrow lanes, and I remember my driver never wanted to go in that area or let me out because he says it's dangerous. But I think the first time I went in there, I had to buy some new running shoes. I could have bought them outside in a modern shopping center, but I decided to go in there, and I went into this store in this narrow lane, and everything was
just imagine
it's magical to me in a way, but the sounds and sights and so on. But I start trying on some shoes, and he's asking, well, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from Canada, and I have to be careful because Americans have difficulty there. Several have been shot, including yeah. And it was a dangerous time in a way. But anyway, I said Canada, and then the guy says, oh, my cousin is in Toronto.
Oh, cool. Small world.
The more time I spent in the bazaar and with my own staff, so many people have relations outside the country.
That's
We have
awesome.
Canada, United States, Australia, here and there. Anyways, that was one of my favorite places. But province-wise, that is an incredibly beautiful place because one, there is a very strong Islamic culture, of course, but historically also a very famous Buddhist. Buddhist history, Buddhist civilization called the Gandhara. And there are still, there's a wonderful museum in Peshawar about it, but you go outside the city and in many places you could visit old monasteries and palaces and so on, going back to the Gandhara age. And in Taxila, where for example, the Mahabharata, the Hindu one of the Hindu texts was first recited. That's the history of it. It was first recited in Taxila, and then it was raised by the Huns in the 5th century and so on. So it's a fantastic experience. The Mongols, by the way, also control that area.
Yeah.
Well, so that province has such a variety of history and rich culture and language, literature, and so on, and extremely hospitable people. That Pakhtun culture is just beautiful. Gilgit-Baltistan is a separate area which has different ethnic groups, and it's closer to it's right in the mountainous areas. And I should say not only Gilgit-Baltistan, but also Chitral, the northern area of Chitral and Kohistan as well. Yeah, beautiful. Well, Chitral itself has incredible history, linked with the Greeks. Alexander,
of all people.
Great, yeah.
I went right through there.
Because he went through there, and in fact there was a. There's a group there, the Kalash, who are is determined through DNAs that they have some Alexander's, some Greek, whatever, admixture, and so that's why their whole the physiognomy and so on is and culture is quite different. So there's the Kalash and there's the Muslim Ko people. Within Chitral, but it's in the mountains and it's a beautiful area. It's right adjacent to Afghanistan, and then going further west from there is Gilgit-Baltistan, and that's a beautiful mountainous country with quite different architecture and quite a good level of education as well. It's been quite well developed. It was, the last time I was there, it was quite dormant because of the terrorist activities.
Sure.
But it's picking up. It's picking up now again.
Well, it seems like your experience in Pakistan is the exact opposite of what the media purports the place to be like. And I've taken a huge interest in it, especially for the mountain regions, for trekking and being outdoors, and everything just looks stunningly beautiful. So
it is, and the people are wonderful, and there's a couple of ski areas as well. For example, if one goes in the winter, there's Naltar in the north, and then down in Swat there's a ski area. There's also, if you're interested in horse polo, not my type of polo, but horse polo. Every July in Shandur, Chitral, there's horse polo tournaments, and it's just that again, it's historically incredibly interesting. Anthropologically, it's very interesting. The different cultures, very good food available, and those are have always been relatively safe areas. Chitral, Gilgit-Baltistan have been the safest area, and the other areas it really depends on when a group might be going or when a person might be going, how's the particular environment at that time. Yeah.
Well, it sounds spectacular, and I can't wait to go. And you had mentioned that obviously the Mongols had been through the area. You know Mongolia like the back of your hand, and I would love to get your take on this fascinating destination and just how you got involved in Mongolia and what your favorite parts of it are. And in terms of tourism and the groups that you went through there?
Yeah. Well, I got involved there first. Again, I was asked to lead a trip there. That's how I got involved in Mongolia. But after that, I actually had quite a mix of different work there. Okay. I did a lot of work with the Oyu Tolgoi mine, which is one of the largest gold copper mines in the world, run by Rio Tinto. And I coordinated a team of experts to examine the knowledge and practical skills of local workforce, compare them in sort of visible graphs to international standard, and then be able to very clearly show what type of gap there is and how we can now bridge that gap. Okay. And then based on the time availability of the particular workers and so on, we would develop a program to match that and to bring them up to international standard. Okay. So I was involved in the mine for that. I did also an assessment of a technical university about its graduates, which were aimed at working at the mine in particular professions at the mine, and how close were the graduates able to actually do what the company needed them to do. I also did work in university education, trying to link up a Canadian university with several universities in Mongolia. I did some longer term work for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe as a long-term election observer and analyst. Okay. That's cool. For the presidential elections. That was in 2013. And then I did also, my last project was with the Minister of Environment and Tourism. I developed and coordinated a special course for him and his staff, for 6 of them, including cabinet ministers, on policy issues. Oh, wow. We did that together with our government. Yeah, that was two years ago, I think. That was the last one. Yeah. Okay.
Now, in terms of tourism, what are some of your favorite parts of the country?
Well, that's I always tell people Mongolia, from what I've seen, and I've seen just a small part of the world, but to me, it's the last paradise on earth.
The last paradise on earth. That's a bold statement.
No, you've got an incredibly beautiful country that goes from desert to lakes to forests to all types of physiography that you could think of, which we have in Canada, United States as well, in different countries. But number of people is population is very small. Yep. There are about 3.5 million people, and as you know, fully half of them reside in the capital city. The rest are spread out throughout the land. So there's very little, once you get out of the main city, there's very little pollution, really, except maybe a couple of industrial areas like Erdenet and so on. But and it's a tough country to get around in. I mean, you could fly to many places. All of the IMAGs, all of the provinces have airports, but sometimes you can't fly. And if you drive, it's rough. There aren't very good roads, except to a few industrial towns, like I mentioned, like Erdenet or down to the Gobi. But otherwise, it can be quite rough, and you have to have a lot of patience. I've been on several trips in which vehicles got stuck in the middle of the river. And
it's part of the fun.
Cold water. But even in some of the remoter areas, you can find very good accommodation. Not everywhere, but in a few places. So my favorite places are probably 2. One is the capital city itself, Ulaanbaatar.
Okay.
Which means red courage. And actually in Hungarian, there are about, to my understanding, about 400 words of Mongolian origin, because the Mongolian Empire extended to present-day Hungary.
Hungary, yes.
So, yeah. So I've got sort of two links with Mongolia. One is the Hungarian connection. The other is the Buddhism from
Right. Oh, cool.
in Nepal and so on. But Ulaanbaatar is fascinating. I mean, it's so eclectic. You've got this obviously Asian culture, and yet, you know, you could have a young lady walking in miniskirt with her grandfather who wears a traditional deal, which is a floor length robe, walking in the city. You've got especially good sort of local meals, local food, but you can also have in Ulaanbaatar, we're talking about the best Austrian food, French food, Italian food.
No kidding.
Whatever you want, like Indian food, Chinese food.
Hungarian goulash by any chance?
You can, yes. In fact, in a mining town in Erdenet, I found that the chef of the local Korean restaurant was Hungarian.
You're joking.
And he said, and I said, well, can I bring my team here? There were about 12 of us.
Yeah.
I said, can I bring them here for some Hungarian meal? He says, tell me what you want. I'll make you whatever Hungarian dish you want. And we had the Hungarian meal.
Crazy.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
So Ulaanbaatar and Ulaanbaatar has superb museums, National Museum, Art Museum, Gandan Monastery, and it has a museum as well, markets, and so on. And you go just outside of Ulaanbaatar to Tob, which is a neighboring province, and there's the Manchir Monastery, which you could spend a whole day going through old residences and palaces, part of the monastery. It's just fascinating. But the province that is by far my favorite is Bayanulgi, which is far west, yeah, right on the border. It has a Kazakh Muslim minority.
Yes.
Or Muslim majority there. Extremely hospitable, very, very nice people, and there too you can get excellent food. There's some Turkish influence there. There was a Turkish school and a Turkish restaurant even, so there's quite a bit of what shall I say, sort of cosmopolitanism in this little remote place. But it's right at the foothills of the Altai, and that's why also it's popular with trekkers that like to go up into the lakes and mountains and so on. And then immediately north of Bayanulgi is Uvs, which is a province that doesn't get much tourism, but it's got the largest saline lake in Mongolia. It's Salty Lake is the largest, and it's the northernmost sand desert in the world. So the Gobi, which is further south, is very large. This is the largest, the northernmost sand desert in the world, up in Uvs. So people don't think of it because it's in the northwest and the Gobi is down in the south.
Right, everybody thinks the Gobi.
The desert, but yes, there is another desert up there as well.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So again, roads driving around, it can be a bit rough, but it's absolutely beautiful country, and it's just full of these archaeological digs and old cemeteries, Turkic cemeteries, and rock carvings. It's a fascinating place. So,
speaking of archaeology, true or false? Have you discovered a dinosaur bone?
Yes.
True.
This was in the down in the Gobi. And Gobi, by the way, means desert. So Gobi Desert is like saying chili con carne with meat.
That's great. I'm going to use that. I'm totally stealing that from you.
The Bayanzag, which popularly is known as the Flaming Cliffs, is sort of on the tourist route in the Gobi because it's very famous. And but what happens, you get a lot of strong winds sometimes, and you think you've seen everything. You go there the next time, and because of the strong winds, the sand has been swept off particular areas, and all of a sudden there's a bone there. And that's how I discovered this one dinosaur bone.
That's insane.
And I reported
a picture of it. So,
yeah.
spoiler alert, I knew the answer to that question in advance. I'm going to put it up so everybody can see on the YouTube video.
Yeah,
awesome.
Sure. But and I reported it as soon as I could. But like I found in other countries, like in Nepal, there isn't they don't have the resources to necessarily go after every kind of archaeological, historical find that one makes.
Right.
And the result was that when I went back the next year, you saw the other picture, which was it's been sawn off, and who knows where it is? I don't know.
Unbelievable.
So
good timing on your part.
But I spent, I've been to the Gobi, I think about 8 times.
Wow.
Not just for trekking, but also working with the mine. The mine that I worked with was also in the Gobi, and you've got the Kongorin Els, which is the singing sand dunes. Fantastic hiking up there with beautiful views. There's the Yuel Valley, which is at the foot of the Altai range, and although it's linked with the Gobi, it's a very narrow valley, and depending on the amount of snowfall, even in the summertime, you could find snow and ice. Yeah, and it used to be called. I corrected it with a couple of companies. They used to call it a glacier. And the glacier. Well, it's not a glacier. It's just snow that hasn't melted, or ice that hasn't melted there. And sometimes it does melt totally, and then you could walk further up this narrow valley. But that area also has very nice museum. And then there are also the Habsgate petroglyphs. Fascinating, and that's in many places. The petroglyphs are throughout west and north, basically all over Mongolia. Also have many places with lapicides. Lapicides are these stone pillars with drawings on them of various types, some with letters, some with pictures, and so on. That's also in many places in Mongolia. Another favorite place is Khobsgol.
Oh, Khobsgol, yeah. Lake Khobsgol.
That's fascinating. It links with a river to Lake Baikal on the Siberian side, up in Russia. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's a totally different physiography. Forests, rich forests, and lots of water. That's also close to Khobsgol is some reindeer pastoralism.
Yeah, the Titan, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's just a beautiful area. I actually prefer 3 times I went to there's this Nadam festival, which is a big festival in Mongolia. Nice. And 3 times I took groups to Khobsgol rather than in Ulaanbaatar.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And these, I found out since then, of course, that these rural Nadams are a lot more fun because
I'm sure. Yeah.
Because in the main city, it's very formal, and you have to sit in particular places, and the action is far from you because there are a lot of people there, right? In the village, almost any village that would hold an Nadam, or any province, it's a smaller area. You could squeeze in everywhere. You could mingle with the archers and the wrestlers and
right. Else. It's a little less structured, a little bit more chilled out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I've got pictures of Americans challenging the Indians to wrestling matches.
Oh my God.
They wrestled back in school in California or wherever, and
yeah. They came back and just gave it a go in Mongolia.
Gave it a go, yeah. So it was a lot more fun.
Down in like 5 seconds, Just,
that didn't happen.
Absolutely zero wrestling experience with like some guy that's that's done it forever and it's got a shorter step. I would be crushed in 2 seconds.
Another favorite place is when I came once from Siberia down to Mongolia, and close to the when you cross into Mongolia, you're in the Salenga province, and there's the Amarbayazgalant Monastery, which is one of the oldest in Mongolia. Okay. It's extensive. It's very large territory. beautiful, beautiful place in the mountains. Very reasonable accommodations available there as well. And just like, again, if you're interested in religion, history, architecture, and so on, it's a beautiful place to visit.
What's the name of it again?
It's no other country. Pardon?
What's the name of the monastery again?
Amarbayas Galant.
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to get that spelling from you.
I'll send it to you. Anyways, but there are many places in in Mongolia. I mean, there's oh gosh, I mean, I mentioned some of my favorite ones, but there are other ones that are available that are
scattered throughout.
Are monasteries. There are old architecture and some quaint cities and so on.
Right.
Temples.
It's got it all.
It's got it all. It really does. It really does. And the people with the hosting is wonderful. In some places you would have to be more self-sufficient depending on the group and where you're going. Yeah. But with good planning, you can go almost anywhere. There's also, if people are interested in skiing in Mongolia, there are 2 ski resorts.
That's unbelievable.
One is run by the mine in Erdenet, and one in Ulaanbaatar.
Cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And speaking of having no idea, and this show is not primarily. This is nothing about this entire platform that I've created is a hard sell about anything. And in no intention do I have in the future to offer the next country I'm going to ask you about as a destination for guests. But you've been to this place, and I find that totally fascinating, and I want to hear about it. Tell me about North Korea.
Well, it's like, do you know Salvador Dali?
Yes.
Yes. So you either dig what he does and you like it, or you just don't understand it.
Right.
That's North Korea.
Okay.
It either makes no sense or
it makes no sense.
It's neat. It's good.
That's a great way to describe it.
I was invited there by, I got to know in another country, I got to know the North Korean ambassador. Mm-hmm. And I actually thought that perhaps because our country, Canada, had diplomatic relations with North Korea. Mm-hmm. And my idea was that if I could get a foot in the door for developing some development project through university, we'd get ahead of other Canadian universities and American universities, which there weren't any there actually, right? He very kindly gave me an invitation. Okay. He says, we'll officially invite you to North Korea. And then he gave me an email address, and I used the email address, and I was told, I mean, this is through several communications, but finally I was told, okay, this is your official invitation. You have to fly to Beijing. Mm-hmm. And then come to our embassy, and there we'll issue you a visa and a ticket to fly down to Pyongyang.
Oh my God.
And I thought, okay, so I end up going to Beijing, and then they say, well, who told you that?
Who told you that all the way? Oh my God.
I was thinking, what happened?
Okay.
Well, my university will pay for me because they were interested in getting their foot in the door.
Of course.
And anyways, went back actually a couple of times, and the guy said, I assure you, please believe us. And it sort of was like Pakistan, where somebody told me, just, trust us.
Of course.
So flew to Beijing, went to the hotel where they said I should stay, went to their embassy, which was just 5-minute walk from there. Okay. And literally within 5 minutes, I had my visa and ticket. Yeah. And so then I was greeted, of course, by government. People call it handlers or whatever. There were a couple of people from the interior affairs and so on, foreign affairs, and then later on I met other people from the government. So yes, I was with a lot of government people, and one of them stayed with me on another floor in the same hotel.
Yeah.
But my mission was, and what they were able to arrange for me was meetings with various universities, meetings with the National Library, meetings with the technical school. Okay. And we had very good meetings, I thought, and they gave me a wonderful tour of the city, and we went outside the city as well, rural areas.
What was
How do I abbreviate all this?
What did it look like? What were the people like?
You have beautiful, broad boulevards in Pyongyang with hardly any traffic on them. So that was one odd thing. In one, I remember walking back from one, and by the way, they told me if you want to walk around, walk around. And so every morning before breakfast and every late afternoon before dinner, I went for walks, and nobody came with me. I walked around. And one day I saw this elderly lady with a very heavy load walking, and there was a choice for her to walk across the road where there was no traffic, or the official crossing was in an underground walkway. Yeah. She crossed the road because it was so heavy, didn't want to go down and up
the steps and back up.
And she was immediately cornered by police.
Oh, wow.
And I told this to my colleague, my government colleague there. Right. I said, what I saw this, what happens to her? And he says, yeah, sorry, she'll get a bit of a fine, but
okay,
you mustn't do it. And I myself crossed the road because there's no cars. Why not? And
why not? Yeah.
Just please don't do it again because they don't like it. I'll get into trouble. Like he'll get into trouble.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Just crossing the street.
That was sort of odd, but and then one of the things I tried while walking around is eliciting smiles from people.
Okay.
And I was past a lot of people, and I would smile, and I thought and hardly anybody would smile back. I mean, they didn't know if maybe I was from a different culture. Maybe they thought I was American, or I don't know. Or they're just afraid of, they'll be asked, well, why did you look at him? So I had no idea. Anyways, the only person that smiled at me was a traffic policewoman.
Oh, wow.
Wow. She was, directing traffic, and she smiled back.
Smiled back. Unbelievable.
But we had... we had very good meetings at universities and library and the technical college, and we had a lot of, every evening we were together, and I could tell that many of them, certainly ones that spoke English and other languages, some spoke Spanish and French and so on. They've lived outside the country, and they realized that there are other ways of living, and perhaps better ways. I don't know, but it's not a place where you want to stick out by making a comment or a suggestion that
sure.
may not be appropriate within the country, because you'll get into trouble. I mean, talking about the local people, you can't. Yeah. So in that sense, it is very strict. But I can also tell that there were people genuinely interested in making the country better. Mm-hmm. They had a different context, a different understanding of the history from the war.
Right.
Which you could say, well, it's incorrect or it's not, but that's their understanding, and you have to be able to address that in dealing with them. And very intelligent.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Very intelligent. And we had actually developed some excellent collaborative plans.
Wow. So it was a success.
Well, it was a success in developing plans, which after I followed up here, we were able to sort of complete the plans. But I can't go into, because of confidentiality, as to why it didn't work out. But it didn't work out. But and then we stayed in touch for, I kept in touch with them. And the last actually was about, it's about 10 years ago now. I got a note from one of them who was based in Central America now, in embassy, asking if I can send spare car parts to him.
Oh my gosh, that's cool. That's cool.
But no, I had very good. Personally, I had good experience with them. They were very kind. They explained. We had some very frank discussions.
Sure.
Especially after a bit of drinking in the evening together. Tongues loosened up a bit. So, and again, I would understand why any of them who may have very good ideas how to improve their own society would not be able to speak up.
They can't speak up, right? Right, which is the big tragedy, I think.
Yeah.
But listen, I'm glad that was a success for you. What an experience to take home that nobody else, not nobody, but not you were in the very extreme minority of people that have been able to do something like that, which is extremely cool. But
I asked them to take me to a bookstore. I said, "Do you have bookstores?" They said, "Yes." I said, "I'd love to see your books. Can you take me to a bookstore? I want to find out more about North Korea." And they took me to this huge bookstore, and I go from shelf to shelf, from table to table, and it's all Kim Il-sung books.
Did you buy one?
You want it in English? It's here. You want it in Portuguese? It's here. You want it in French? It's there. But that's all. You couldn't find anything.
Were you allowed to buy one?
Oh yeah, I got several. In fact, they also gave me some for free. And
cool. Cool.
So I've got some interesting books from there. But I was hoping on more, not just sort of political literature, but historical and
of course.
Archaeological, anthropological, something like that. Anyways,
that
you can buy more of those outside the country than in the country.
Right. And two, like I had mentioned before, like this is something that I just find to be a fascinating story. It's nothing that has to do with like promoting North Korea, but to kind of reverse on a destination that we do promote and sell a lot, and a country that you've spent a ton of time in, which you mentioned before. I know you've been to leading trips, treks, and experiences all across Nepal.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experiences in Nepal and what your favorite parts of the destination are.
Oh, that's the most difficult question today.
How would you?
I went there first in '76 to climb, and I did some work in a mission school. But then I went back full-time between 80 and 82. I was one of 3 people who received a scholarship from the Nepal government to do my postgraduate work there.
Okay.
There was one other Canadian and one American, and then they stopped the program after us. So I spent 2 years full-time, and after that, almost yearly I went there, if not for tourism, for some other contractual work. And overall, I lived there about 13 years.
Okay, 13 years, wow.
Yeah, so I worked there with 5 different ministries.
Mm-hmm.
And I've literally been throughout all 75 districts of the country, literally.
Really?
So I visited every single district. Most of my time was spent in, let's say I've spent about 5 months in the southern part on what's called the Tarai, which is on the border with India.
Okay.
Sort of the formerly jungle area, flat area.
We're close to Chitwan National Park.
Yeah, I spent about a year in the northern areas, mountain areas, like the Khumbu and Manang and other areas along there, and then about 5 years in the western part of the country. So I've been all over. So now, if you're asking me about my favorite places there, that's the difficult part.
That's a loaded question.
There's beauty all over the country, sort of like in Mongolia and northern Pakistan.
Right.
Kathmandu, although it's the most polluted area, has to be a favorite because of the culture there. It's very old. It goes back to the 12th century, and religion and then other culture, literature, especially of the Newar community and so on, incredibly rich, and that needs to be seen and experienced through the festivals and so on.
Right, with
but
the blend
outside
of Hindu and Buddhist culture all kind of coming into one point together.
Yeah, Buddhist and Hindu.
Yeah.
The Buddhist, what's famous for the Buddhist area, of course, there are famous places in the Kathmandu Valley itself, but Lumbini, where Buddha was born,
right,
is a very famous pilgrimage area for Buddhists. And there are Buddhist, I was out in the Midwestern part of the country, walking through fields and I came across these lapis, these stone carvings, stone pillars with Buddhas on them and so on. And I realized from reading they were probably from the 12th century, but they were in farmers' fields. And then I saw some farmers were sharpening their knives on these stones.
Yeah.
Not really knowing or caring, I don't know, not knowing what it was perhaps. And I went to an archaeological office and saying, I saw this happening in these fields. They weren't in town; they were out in the hills. I said, well, can you protect them, or what do you know about them? And there were two people working in the archaeological office, and they said, well, we'd love to, but we don't even have funds for gasoline for our cars, let alone. Right. So there are many places like this that are unprotected. I walked through, I went from the western border of the country with India and walked up to quite far up towards what's called Humla. But we went through an area called Bajang and Bajura. These are all also districts. Mm-hmm. Right. They used to be separate petty kingdoms. And in one part, going through the forest, we came across a palace overgrown, which reminded me of Angkor Wat, when they found Angkor Wat, it was overgrown and so on, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't nearly as big, but the same idea that it was an old palace, but overgrown, sure. Not used, there's nothing else around it. And I found several places like that throughout the country where there's just history is still waiting to be found and protected.
That's incredible.
One of the problems there with some historical areas is they're just inadequately protected. Mm-hmm. But they're beautiful. Whether you're in the in the Tarai where there's jungle and rivers, and or up in the middle hills, which is a little bit cooler, or further up in the high mountains where you could go, where most of the trekkers go, and so on. The wonderful hospitality, excellent food, and many places have very interesting historical things to see.
And tell me a little bit about the Kingdom of Lo and Mustang.
Yeah, I spent several months there actually.
Oh wow, several months.
Yeah, part of my work from 80 to 82 was actually there.
Okay.
So that was a petty king. In fact, I think I sent you a picture with the king, the former king.
Yes.
He passed away. Yeah.
Yes.
There's another story with that, but it's a former petty kingdom, which when Nepal sort of solidified itself, all these petty kings had to express their fealty, their loyalty to the King of Kings, which is the king in Kathmandu, right? And then slowly, as they died off, their progeny couldn't become kings.
Yeah,
you're the king, and then you die. Well, that's it for your.
That's it. Yeah, that's
for your lineage. So it's the same in Mustang. He was quite a powerful king in that area, but it's connected physiographically. It's connected with Tibet. It's the same altitude, and the passage to and from Quebec there, to and from Tibet is quite easy. And when China was taking over Tibet, a lot of the Khampas, which were this military tribe in Tibet, escaped into Nepal.
Right.
And they actually set up a training camp in Mustang, and then lower down from Mustang, near the Jomsom area, just below Mustang. And in fact, they were pretty well ruling that area for a while. They were rough and tough, and not like the sort of the local people. And eventually, the CIA was supporting them. They were training training in the hills north of Jomsom.
Okay.
And then, anyways, finally they were forced, because of the agreement between Nepal and China, they were forced to disband, and some of them married there and stayed there. Some of them migrated to Dharamshala, where the Dalai Lama was escaped to. So they basically dispersed.
Okay.
But I remember when speaking with the king there, he says, "Could you bring us?" I forget what it was. Something to do with the water system, or can you bring us some solar panels, or can you donate this, you donate that?
Right.
And this family was going on shopping trips to Hong Kong every year.
Oh my gosh.
And I knew that, and I'm sorry. I think you may have the funds here already.
Right.
You know, I can maybe help you to do this in a different way, but I certainly couldn't. Yeah, it's historically it's one of the oldest places. I mean, there's so much there with 12th century, 13th, 14th century monasteries, cliff dwellings.
Yeah, the cliff dwellings I've seen, they look amazing. And correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like one of the last remaining bastions of like unspoiled, pure Tibetan culture on the planet. Is that an accurate statement?
It probably is. Yeah, it probably is. I mean, I don't know where else there would be, because there's still a couple of Bimpo temples. Bimpo predates Buddhism.
Yep.
And the practices. Yeah, I mean, there are. It's probably where most of the Tibetan culture is, but you have bits of it in some of the Khumbu areas like Namche Bazaar. There's some there.
Sure.
There's some wonderful monasteries north of there, where relatively few people go, still in that area, and in other parts of the country. But for Tibetan Buddhism, that's probably the strongest area for sure.
Awesome. I mean, I'm seethingly jealous to Mustang. That's definitely on my list for places to go. And there's a lot of things that are going on around the globe, not just related to the pandemic and elections that are being held all around the world. And there's a big shift of things that are going on geopolitically. What are some amazing countries that you've been to that aren't currently a good option for tourism that you're optimistic to see travel to in the future?
Well, I think the one that sticks out most for me would be Libya.
Right.
It used to be a Roman bastion there. I mean, there are several Roman amphitheaters and so on. It was part of the Roman civilization, and just fantastic history there as well.
What's that? Magna, I think it is.
That's one of them. Yes. There are several. I can't remember now offhand the other, but there were 3 that I visited. And again, people were at that point very, very hospitable. Yeah. Everywhere I went to, probably about 4 different cities along the coast, including where Gaddafi was born, and so on. Right. I went there twice. It was also related to university work. Yeah. So I met with several universities and also mining companies.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So I would hope that it'll be a while before that opens up again. But I'm very happy to have been able to go there.
I think. Have you been to Algeria by any chance?
No.
Okay, that's definitely on my list too. Kind of a lot of the same similarities, and also the desert scenery just looks absolutely gorgeous. But I just don't think even pre-pandemic, I don't think that would be a good option in terms of safety. What about any other places that stick out that you still love to visit that are on your list?
Oh gosh, I'd love to go to the Falklands.
Okay. Yes.
Falkland Islands.
Yes.
I'd love to go to South Georgia.
Yes.
The British colony, Saint Helena.
Saint Helena, the island in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yes. It's together with Ascension and Tristan da Cunha.
Yeah.
It's all one. Yeah. Faroe Islands.
Faroe Islands. Yeah.
I'd love to go there. I'd love to go on the Trans-Siberian Railway.
That would be great.
Many have, and it still exists, and you could go all the way through from Europe to all the way to China if you want, or stop in Mongolia or wherever. But
you can break it up, and for me, that would be like super nostalgia going back through Russia.
Yes, absolutely. Those are ones that stick in my mind. And there are other beautiful places where I've been in Switzerland and France and Provence in the southern part of France and Hungary, Slovakia.
Right.
I spent a lot of time there, of course. I even did work, again, there was university work in Slovakia.
Right. You had a project with the Roma there, if I'm not
mistaken. With the Roma, that's right.
No, that's I've only been up to Bratislava. I've never been outside, but I would love to explore. They got a lot of these Central and Eastern European nations. Unfortunately, a lot of the countryside gets looked over. You mentioned you're from Hungary, and I used to live in Budapest, and getting outside of the city every weekend was just the countryside is gorgeous. These these ruined castles, and it's just fascinating. The food is incredible. The people are warm. It's a great.
Yeah, that's right. I think all the countries there, actually, I have my favorites, but all the countries have such a rich history, old history, and that almost anyone you pick, you could find some beautiful areas for.
Oh, it's easy. It's easy. But listen, we've got to wrap up in a little bit. Do you have any parting comments for the guests that are eagerly waiting to get on a plane and go somewhere?
Well, I would try to steer them to places where there aren't too many tourists, or there haven't been too many tourists yet.
Sure.
So you have a little bit of adventure, but in places where you could somehow control the adventure, you're not going on an ice climbing trip type of thing.
Right.
But so up the Mahakam River, or even in Nepal, going to some particular districts where there isn't much tourism. Indonesia, favorite of mine in East Kalimantan. Again, not too many tourists, and yet very rich in every way. And Pakistan, which has, again, as we talked, a very welcoming population, wonderful, beautiful scenery. And one of the problems in being able to say which is my favorite is that I found so many favorites that in Canada I lived in Calgary and Montreal and Quebec City and Ottawa and Vancouver, and there's so many beautiful places like in the United States that I certainly would not be able to say Pakistan is better than Sri Lanka is better than Nepal. Mongolia is not possible. Yeah. Every country has some absolutely beautiful, welcoming places, and if you have some open mind, open heart to the local culture, you're willing to learn, you can have a lifetime of enjoyment in any of them.
I agree 100%. Well, listen, Ivan, thank you so much for your time, and this has been great. I can't wait to get the episode up.
You're welcome. Hope to see you again soon.
All right.
Cheers.
Take care, man. Have a great afternoon.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Smart Aspirations. Justin Huff is the manager of Swaggy Swan Travel. For all travel-related inquiries, please visit www.swaggyswan.com. That's www.swaggyswan.com. And click inquiries. Have a stupendous day, and we'll see you next week.